Hello YouTube, my name is Billy and welcome back to my kitchen. Tonight I'm going to make, just going to whip something up really quick, mostly because I haven't been to the grocery store since before the holidays. Normally I stay pretty stocked up, pretty much all the time, but we were going out of town and then when we came home we were back to work and then we got sick and, well, I just haven't been to the grocery store, so I have searched high and low, my refrigerator, my pantries, and we're going to make a pasta dish, and we're going to make our own cheese sauce just because I don't have any pasta sauce, and we're going to do some chicken parmesan. To get started, I'm going to make up a little seasoning here, and I've shown you a similar recipe that I use, and I'm going to use this just to season my chicken. I'm going to take about half a teaspoon of salt, then half a teaspoon of ground black pepper, garlic powder, the same, about a half, and then onion powder, half a teaspoon. Okay, and then just to give it a little bit of heat, we're going to just put in a dash, and I mean a small dash, of cayenne pepper. Not a lot. Cayenne has got a really good flavor, but it can go from very mild to just an explosion in your mouth if you're not careful with it. If you like really hot stuff, then it doesn't bother, then you won't have to worry, but not everyone can handle really hot food. And we're just going to kind of whisk that together until it's all blended, and then we're just going to set that aside because we're going to use that to go on the chicken. Okay, now for the chicken, I'm going to start with that because it's going to take the longest amount of time. I'm going to get a really sharp knife, and then I'm going to get, this is a pretty large chicken breast that I've got here. Okay, and I'm just going to cut that carefully into just little strips that are just easier to work with. Okay. I'm going to be frying 2 of these, but I'm going to do the smaller sections just because I find that when you use these really large chicken breasts like this, you try to fry them and sometimes they don't always get done. So I just like cut them up. Let me wash my hands real quick. Okay, now that my hands are clean and the chicken is cut pretty much the way I want it, I'm going to take my little bowl of seasoning mix, and then I'm just going to use my hands, and I'm just going to sprinkle that all over the top, just to give it a nice flavor. Chicken is very versatile because it doesn't have a lot going for it on its own, so you want to really build up the flavors of your chicken because it's really Okay. All right, now we're just gonna let that set and marinate for a little bit. Now over here on the stove, you can see that I have a pretty large skillet. I'm gonna turn the canola oil. It's a pretty large amount of oil in the pan because we're gonna fry the chicken, and I'm gonna get that ready. Move that over here. And I'm gonna get a plate, just any old plate, and some panko Japanese style breadcrumbs, and I'm just gonna pour those out all on the plate. Move that aside. Now we're doing quite a few pieces of chicken, so I'm gonna get with 2 eggs, and some milk, and a fork. Okay, take your egg, one good crack, drop it in. Nice and easy, no shells in the food. One good crack, peel it apart. No shells in the food. Okay. All right. Just a splash of milk. And we're just gonna whisk that up. We're going to set those aside. Okay, so now we're going to start the mozzarella cheese sauce. And you're really just going to need a few things. You're going to need I'm going to need Gizmo to cooperate is what I'm going to need. Okay. You're going to need some butter, and you could use salted or unsalted. It doesn't matter for this. All right, you want a medium saucepan. You want some Parmesan cheese. You want some mozzarella cheese. And you are going to want some milk or heavy cream. I'm going to go with the milk just to keep it a little bit on the lighter side. Mozzarella cheese is also a great way to go lighter because it's probably one of the least amount of fat cheeses that you can get. So, butter is not necessarily going lighter, but compared to margarine, there may be less fat in margarine than butter, but margarine is not better for you. It is not better to put in your body. So, that's another subject. Okay, all right, so we're gonna do 2 cups of milk. get you down here where you can see what I'm doing. Okay. And then you're going to want half a cup of Parmesan cheese, and you're just going to dump that in the milk. Just dump that right in there. And just use your whisk to kind of go ahead and break some of those larger chunks up. Okay. All right, and then you're going to want to take your mozzarella cheese. And this is about 2 cups. You're going to dump that in. Just kind of whisk that around. At this point, it doesn't really matter. You're going to put it on the stove and melt it down. Okay, we're just building it up at this point. Now, you're going to take, in a small bowl, you're going to take about 3 tablespoons of butter, and you want to let that get soft. Okay, so we're going to let that sit until it gets soft. We're going to set it over here on the stove, and it'll heat up pretty good. Okay. Now, we're going to go back over here to the stove. And hopefully we can get Gizmo. Okay, so now we've got the oil hot. Okay, we're going to get this little plate of panko really close to the oil. Okay, and you're going to have a little assembly line here. You're going to get your chicken strips into the egg wash, and then you're just going to roll them in the panko, just until they're nice and evenly coated. Alright, and you're going to take those and drop those into the hot oil. You can stop. Okay, we've got all of the chicken in the skillet, and then I've got a large pot full of water that I'm going to salt. Alright, and we're going to bring that to a boil. And then we're going to cook these spinach noodles in the water. Alright, now back to the sauce. You're going to want 2 pretty good size cloves of garlic in it. Just snip the ends off, and you'll find that the little wrapping comes right off. It's really easier. I don't like to smash my garlic. I just don't like to do that. And that comes off a lot easier than just smashing it. Okay, we're going to chop the garlic up. All right, and we're gonna take that. Now I do our garlic a little bit coarsely chopped just because we really like the garlic, and we don't mind the bits. Okay. You're just gonna give that a little toss, and then you can season your sauce with whatever you want. I'm gonna take half a teaspoon of parsley. I'm out of tarragon. We're just gonna do with parsley and thyme. Really light, but effective flavoring. Seasoning. Okay, now we're gonna take this over here to the stove. And we're gonna put that on we're gonna go with medium heat, but I don't want it to heat too fast. I want this to cook very slowly, giving that cheese enough time to melt. All right, now our chicken is getting golden brown, and we're just gonna use our tongs, and we're gonna flip that right over. I really like using the panko because it gives it a really nice crunch. You can stop. Okay, now that we have everything on the stove pretty much going on its way, I'm going to show you how to make a really good little dipping sauce for your bread that most often is served with, Italian style dishes. Just get a little plate and put a little drizzle of olive oil in there. Take some balsamic vinegar. Now we really like you can add as little or as much of the balsamic vinegar as you want. Now it will kind of separate from the oil, but that's okay. We like it, it's a really good flavor. Okay, you're gonna crack in some salt. Go a little heavily handed on your spices because the oil is gonna need a lot of help. Some black pepper. Okay, and then we're gonna sprinkle in some parsley. Not a lot of it. And a little bit of thyme. You could add pretty much whatever you want to your oil mixture. Okay, and you want to let that set for a little while everything is getting ready. And then you'll just take your good artisan bread and just tear that off and then dip it in there, and it's really amazing. Okay, our sauce is going on the stove, but you really are going to want to make a thickening agent so your sauce is not too runny. You're just going to take the butter that we put over by the stove to let it soften up. And just start kind of working it up with your fork just to make sure it's going to be easy to work with, and that's fine. Take a couple of tablespoons of cornstarch and dump that in there, in with the butter. And then you're just going to want to mash your butter and your cornstarch up together until it's the consistency of maybe like wet sand or something, or a pastry dough, something along those lines. Doing this ensures that you won't have clumps of the cornstarch in your sauce. That's one of my biggest pet peeves is gravies or sauces that are lumpy because whoever didn't make them did not take the time to make sure there's no lumps. Lumpy sauces or lumpy gravy is just, it's no good. It doesn't look good. It doesn't feel good in your mouth. And it's just not good. That was 3 tablespoons of butter. So I'm gonna equal them same amount of, so 3 tablespoons of cornstarch. And if you don't have cornstarch, you could use flour. Cornstarch just does a really much nicer job of thickening up sauces, and it doesn't take as long. Okay, so once all of that is pretty much incorporated, we're just gonna set that aside and then come over here. You want to stir your sauce pretty consistently until the cheese melts and let it start to reduce. Once the cheese is completely melted, you know, and okay, if you look here, our chicken is completely golden and crispy on all sides. We're gonna go ahead and take that out and lay that on a paper towel, and that will stay hot for a very long time. Turn that off, get that off the hot burner. Okay, now the water is boiling pretty good, and you're just gonna take, I love this pasta. This is one of the nicest ways to do pasta. It comes in these little spirals, and you just drop them right in the water. It's really nice. It's a really good and easy way to kind of judge how much pasta you're gonna use. You know, when you get the spaghetti, you know, packages, it's always a guessing game. It's like rice. Either you made enough or you didn't make enough. You know, you made too much or you didn't make enough at all. Okay, and then we're just gonna give that just a little toss. Now these little noodles, they do not take long at all. Like way less than your spaghetti noodles. Okay, we're gonna turn this sauce down. Okay, and you can really smell the mozzarella and the Parmesan and the garlic in there. I'm going to turn that back up a little bit. Because we're going to dump this butter. In fact, I'm going to use a spoon. Get a nice spoon and scoop that all out. Get all of it. You're going to need all of it. Okay. Take your spoon right down into the hot sauce and just kind of let it sit there until the heat melts that right off the spoon. And then you can go back to using your whisk. Okay. And you're just going to stir that up. Keep stirring. It's kind of like making gravy, but you don't want it quite that thick. So you want to make sure you're stirring this just until the butter and the cornstarch are dissolved, and you want to make sure that it's really smooth. So once your butter is completely melted, you're going to want to go ahead and turn your heat to pretty low, or you could turn it off because this pan and the sauce is really hot. Okay, so it's starting to thicken up, so I'm going to turn that off, and I'm just going to start stirring it really well. All right, I'm gonna take it off that heat, and I'm gonna stir this really well. And if you find that your sauce is getting a little too thick, you could add a little splash of milk. And that's what I'm gonna do, because it really thickened up a lot. But that's an easy fix. Just take a little bit of milk and all right, and then just stir it up. Because the cheese is gonna start, as it cools, the cheese is gonna start to congeal back together. And then with that and the cornstarch in there, it's gonna get pretty gooey, but it's gonna be good. All right, and we're just gonna just pour a little bit more milk until it's, there we go. That's what we want, right there. Just a nice creamy sauce. All right, we'll put that on that burner. The burner's off, but it's still hot. Okay, and that's good. It's nice. See, that's good. Here. It's thick enough to hold on to the pasta, but it's thin enough. It's gonna be a good sauce. Very good. Very, very good. Okay, once your pasta is done, you're just gonna take that up. Just strain it. All right, and then it's ready to serve.